Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, your home for Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. You can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, or you can check us out anywhere you get your podcast from. I'm your host, Nick Belsky, joined as always by Nick Horwat on the other side of the screen there. We're going to dive today a little deeper into Sidney Crosby's scoring struggles and tell you why this is something that is not new for the Penguins captain. And then we have a listener question asking, well, is Drew O'Connor a part of the Penguins future? And we'll finish things off with our weekly Pens poll. Let's get started on the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. And let's start with the biggest conversation surrounding the Pittsburgh Penguins right now, which is the captain. A lot of people recently began talking about Sidney Crosby's goal-scoring struggles. 2 goals in the last 16 games, 0 in the last 7, specifically since he scored goal number 600 against the Utah Hockey Club. Horwat, I'm just going to ask you plain and simple, what do you make of Sidney Crosby's performance of late?
It hasn't been ideal. If my dogs in the background are of any help, it's been brutal, and they're gonna make today's episode so much fun, aren't they?
It sounds like it, yeah.
But overall, I'd say it hasn't been good. I mean, 2 goals over the last however many games you said there. I think it was 16. He hasn't scored 6 since his 600th career goal. Mm-hmm. This is not the Sidney Crosby anybody expected, especially after a summer of speculation of not necessarily losing him to a trade, not necessarily losing him to free agency, but just a ton of talk over his future in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of us thought that would kind of amplify him, make him want to show up a little bit more this season, make him want to have a stellar start to the year, a hot start to the year, and really prove that he is still worth every dime he's going to get, which is the same amount of money he's been getting for ages. Mm-hmm. But so far, and on paper, when you look at a 37-year-old, 27 points in 30 games, dude, that's not bad. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's Sidney Crosby we're talking about here. It is still a 37-year-old Sidney Crosby, but he's not fighting off Father Time the way we all expected him to. In fact, he's already done it he's already done a pretty good job at that so far, but now it is getting much tougher to swallow.
Yeah, he has always been a pass-first superstar, which makes him getting to 600 career goals that much more of an impressive feat. But I think he's leaning more into that once again. You look at the past couple of seasons, he was scoring at a very high clip, 30-goal scorer in 2021-22, and in 2022-23, he was a 40-goal scorer last season. But this year, he is trying to spread it out a little bit more is what it seems like, because this is who he's been all season. That's why I'm a little surprised that a lot of people are kind of highlighting this right now and saying, oh, wow, is something wrong with Sidney Crosby that right now? He's been struggling over the past couple of weeks with goal scoring. He's been struggling with goal scoring all season long, outside of a stretch of 3 games between October 31st and November 5th, where he scored 5 goals. He's only scored 3 in 27 games this year. And 3 of his 8 total goals have come on the power play, which is 38% of his total goal scoring. Whereas in the last 3 seasons, when we're talking about him being a 30-goal scorer, being a 40-goal scorer, only 25% of his goals have come on the power play. So he's been doing it a lot at 5-on-5 in recent history, but this year he's just not filling the back of the net the way that he has been in years past. And that's not to say that he's playing poorly. That's just to say that for some reason, he is starting to be more of a facilitator again and less of a potent goal scorer. I think overall his numbers are down a little bit too, which is why you get this glaring, smack in the face of 0 goals in 7 and 2 goals in the last 16. I think that part of that is because he's not finishing the way that he did in years past.
More than just not finishing, it's he's also not dominating games like he used to. I mean, you used to always look back on Crosby as having these huge multi-point nights, night after night, game after game. He's got 2 points here, 3 points here, maybe a 4-point night. He has 6 multi-point games this year out of 30. I don't know what his ratio normally is. That just feels low, though. I mean, with 3 3-point games, one of them being against Buffalo, the other one coming in a 3-assist loss to Minnesota. Then 4 2s, 2 assists against the Detroit Red Wings, and then a couple of 2-goal games with a 2-assist night and a win over Vancouver. And then everything else has just been point here, point here, point here.
Mm-hmm.
It's less domination from Sidney Crosby than ever before, really. Sure, he's turning back into a facilitator because, over the years, everyone always discussed how, goal scoring isn't necessarily his game. I mean, he has 600 in his career, so clearly there is a goal scoring ability there. And without Gensel in the lineup, he kind of needed to bring that a little bit more, but he just hasn't. Like you said, playing facilitator. I don't really know where to, what would be next for Crosby, what direction he should go, because it's Sidney Crosby. It's hard to really have any sort of criticism in the first place, but then also back it with what he needs to do differently. He's probably well aware of where he is, of what he's doing right and wrong, and what needs to be fixed for himself. But who are we to talk about it into a microphone? But it's, as we watch it, like I said, it doesn't look as dominating anymore. There's something missing from the way Sidney Crosby is, and that is the way he could take games over without any sort of hesitation. He just hasn't done that yet this year. That's been a big issue.
Yeah, the biggest issue for him is finishing. And you look at the shooting, and that's what I thought it was earlier in the week. And then I started looking into it as this week progressed. I spent some time, which is why we're talking about it on a Thursday episode and not a Tuesday episode. It gives us a little bit more time to kind of look into what's going on. And he's shooting a very similar amount, not as much as he did in previous seasons. Right now, he's averaging 3 shots per game flat, whereas his career average is 3.19, but his shooting percentage and his quality opportunities when he's getting the opportunity to shoot the puck is way down. A 9% shooting percentage this season, whereas he's never finished below 10.5. You look at his hockey reference, you look at all of those sites, and you're going to see one number stand out glaringly versus the others, and that's finishing. That's shooting percentage. 9% is very un-Crosby-like, but that's all season long, right? And the reason that it kind of feels weird is because he's been playing at this same level all year long, and in fact, his total offensive output has gotten better and better as the year has gone on, but it's just not showing up in goals as much as it's showing up in assists. And that's something that's a little bit weird because in the last 3 seasons, Crosby has called his number a lot more than we're kind of used to. And I think it created this idea that, hey, Gensel's gone. He's going to just put the team on his back and call his own number. No, in fact, it's kind of resulted in him saying, all right, I need to kind of lift everybody else up even more. And that's why you see Rickard Rakell having the season that he's having. And I think that's a big part of it as well.
It could be. But, maybe that is what it is. A lot of Sidney Crosby, his mindset, a lot of Sidney Crosby's mindset also is always doing whatever it takes to win. Passing up on shooting opportunities for better playmaking opportunities, passing up certain things for this. But the Penguins right now, like we've said before, need the goal scorer. And Rickard Rakell with his, I think he has 10 or 11. So right now, 11.
Yeah.
I mean, that shouldn't be, that's great for Rickard Rakell. That's great for the Penguins that he's, producing like that. He shouldn't be leading the team in goals though. And Brian Rust also, Brian Rust is a viable option. Shouldn't be ahead of Sidney Crosby in a race like that. Again, you're not upset that that's what's happening with those two. And you're not upset that those are 2 guys helping the team, especially those 2 specific faces on the first line and producing with that sort of statistic. But they shouldn't be ahead of Sidney Crosby in this situation. They just shouldn't be. It's the way you've looked at the Penguins for the last 20 years. There's no reason why, for most of the seasons at least, anyone should be ahead of Crosby or Malkin in a goals race, in a points race. Flukes happen. Chris Kunitz got in there once or twice for reasons. Sidney Crosby was obviously injured for quite a bit. So was Gino. So there were certain asterisks to be put on that statement, but at the same time, it's at this point they're both healthy. Now Malkin is definitely fading skill-wise, but there's no reason why Sidney Crosby should be third in your goal scoring race.
Mhm.
I mean, he's leading the team in points, but what else did anyone expect there? But, you're going to need more from Crosby in terms of just finding the back of the net and emptying and filling that hole that was left open by Jake Gensel. And I mean, the Penguins didn't do much to, fill it themselves. They kind of left it up to the guys that were already here and Sidney Crosby to figure it out on their own.
Yeah. And now I mentioned the one big thing was the shooting percentage. And the other thing is the fact that he's playing a lot more in the defensive zone, right? The Penguins do not control the puck possession the same way that they have over the last couple of seasons. They're playing in their own zone. They're struggling to get pucks out of their own zone a little bit more. And Crosby's line specifically has just been, kind of caved in defensively more often than not this season. So that also leads to the fact that, you're not going to get as many opportunities when you're playing a lot more 200 feet away from the opposing team's goal. So, you're hoping that he figures it out, but that's what it's been all season long. And it's just this extended drought that has kind of called most people's attention to it. But let's not forget, in the first 10 games, he also only had one goal. Like I said, it was that one stretch where he had 5 goals in 3 games that's kind of allowed him to almost hide the fact that he's having a down year in goal scoring. Like you mentioned, though, still 27 points in 30 games, still leading the team in scoring. So you can't get on him too much for that. But at the same time, you're hoping that his levels get back to kind of his standard. And with that should come more victories and more success for everybody else on the team, because he is the straw that stirs the drink for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Speaking of scoring droughts, let's talk a little bit here about Drew O'Connor, because we got a listener question this week, first time in a while, which, makes me want to remind everybody that if you drop a question in our comment section, we're likely to see it and we're likely going to respond to it. We do have the Wednesday live streams where we answer listener questions, but if you're not able to join on Wednesdays at 2 p.m., then just drop it in the comment section. We're likely to see it, and if we see it, we'll answer it. This one comes to us from Pittsburgh Heather, who says, I fully expect them to trade Pettersson and to try to trade Graves, and then in parentheses says, not likely. I like it. It says, but is O'Connor a part of the Penguins' future, or is it better to be traded for him? And any chance the Penguins trade Marcus Pettersson to the Winnipeg Jets for Braden Yeager? I'll answer the last one first. No. As much as it'd be nice for them to be able to get Braden Yeager back, I don't believe the Jets would take Pettersson for Yeager straight up. And I also don't think the Penguins would want just Braden Yeager in that trade, because it's a kind of a need-based thing, and I think they'd ask for a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible the Jets get in on Pettersson. I mean, they could use a jump on their defense, specifically on that left side. Someone went down with injury not too long ago, so they're in need of a reinforcement there. I also think the PA would get involved somehow, some way, if it was Yeager going back.
Yeah, there's the rule in the NFL that if you trade away a player, you can't trade back for him within 2 years. I wonder if that exists in the NHL.
I don't remember exactly how it went. Wasn't there when the Penguins traded away Jamie Alexiak, and then we'll get back to where we were going. Was that back to Dallas, or was that somewhere else? Because I remember he came from Dallas, and then he was traded, I think, if I'm not mistaken, back to Dallas for the same exact draft pick.
I don't remember all of that.
Okay, well, then we'll digress, and I'll look into it after we're done recording. But as for Drew O'Connor, the point of the question, the crux of why we're here for this segment, is his trade value dipping? Yes. Is he part of the future? Not really anymore, it seems. I mean, he's 26, so he's part of that young group that the Penguins wanted to focus on going forward, and maybe he would be a key piece, except something about this season has felt different. Obviously, the production hasn't been where anyone wanted. He doesn't have the worst plus minus in the team anymore, but it's darn close. And when he's not getting top line minutes, it's tough to see him doing anything really. But like I said, he's young and has a ton of potential still, but with the state of the Penguins, that's a good piece to trade away for assets in return. And that feels more of the possibility with Drew O'Connor here. And that they would probably like to keep him, but considering he's in the last year of his deal, they'd probably get a good return for him if the timing lines up. It just makes the most sense to deal him while they can and get something back.
Yeah, and the thing I look at with O'Connor is there's a stark difference between him and a guy like Phil Tomasino and a guy like Cody Glass, where there's going to be people that are going to say, hey, even if he's struggling, look at those two players. They were struggling on the Nashville Predators, and Cody Glass, yeah, they had to trade a piece to get rid of him. But a guy like Phil Tomasino, Nashville got a 4th-round pick to get him or to get rid of him. But I think the problem with O'Connor is he doesn't have that high draft pedigree that's going to automatically boost the price. He was an undrafted free agent out of college. Plus, he's already 26 years old. So I think with that, his market is 100% determined by his performance. And as you've been mentioning, his performance has been bad all season long. So if the market is there, I do think he's gone. But as of right now, I'm not sure the market's there, and I don't think the Penguins are interested in trading him away for nothing. That's just poor asset management. You're still muted.
Can I hit my button? There we go. Yeah, absolutely. His performance is going to definitely determine his return value. If he's able to pick up a couple more points and play like he was last year a little more, or at least show that he has that ability to still do it, utilize his speed, find the net a little more. Even just getting pucks on net would be a huge help. Maybe that could at least drive something up. This isn't a player you want to lose for nothing at all. That is, like you said, that is poor asset management. If they hold on to him into the offseason, I'm going to ride the train if you re-sign him for a year. That's straight up, because or 2 years, and maybe you make the trade down the line. Players move all the time. It's very like we know it here in Pittsburgh. It's very rare that players stick around on the same team their whole careers. Drew O'Connor certainly is not going to stay on the Penguins his whole career. It might be this year he gets dealt. It might be next. He might even go to free agency. Because he isn't producing this year, it's not like he's going to cost a ton of money to re-sign. So if he's here in the offseason, you re-sign him for a year and kick the can down the road. Otherwise, I'd say absolutely if he hits a stride, strike while the iron is hot.
Yeah, if there's a market there, that's why I'm saying if there's a market there, he's gone, because the Penguins looking at him on an expiring deal, knowing that, hey, if he does get to free agency, they'd probably like to re-sign him, bring him back and give him an opportunity to kind of prove that this was a down season and he can bounce back and be what he was last year. But there's a chance that he walks. He's going to be unrestricted, right? So, I mean, there's a chance that you lose him for nothing anyway. So I think that they are going to shop him, especially because when he is playing well, that is a player that a lot of contending teams will like to have. He's good on the forecheck. He has good foot speed. He's a big body and can penalty kill. So he's somebody that has desirable skill sets. He just hasn't been playing well. And the biggest thing is it looks like he's chasing. It kind of looks like he did a couple years ago when he first got into the league, where he was just a step behind the play. He was just one kind of millimeter or 1 inch off of making the play, and he just can't seem to catch up to the game. That's what it looked like on Tuesday, and that's why he was dropped from the second line down to the third line. And even when he was on the third line with Lizotte and with Bunting, he still looked to be kind of a step behind. The one time he looked to be timing things right, Michael Bunting took an interference penalty and kind of negated what could have been either a partial breakaway or a kind of a small 2-on-1 opportunity. I would have liked to see that materialize, because maybe that could have been the turning point in his season, get a little bit of momentum going, get off the schneid there, but it didn't happen. And still, we look at Drew O'Connor as a player that is playing, I don't want to say under market value, because he's not getting paid all that much money, but he's playing far below expectation, especially whenever he kind of boosted that line so much in the last dozen or so games of last season.
Yeah, he was a huge piece of that stretch run they went on last year. And maybe he does just need that one goal to sort of kick things off in the way that it did for Michael Bunting already.
Yeah.
Just getting the monkey off your back. Again, he's got 9 points already this year, but just getting another one getting a good one to really feel like, okay, there it is. Let's roll along. And finding that rhythm, like I said, Michael Bunting found his one tally, and it took off from there. Now he has 7 goals. Drew O'Connor hasn't scored since, oh boy, the 8th grade picnic, it looks like.
Yeah, October 18th.
Yeah, and he had second straight game with a goal there too. 2 points the game before against Buffalo. We're nearing 2 months since a goal. These are the kind of stretches that start to get noticed by, a lot of people within the organization, out of the organization, and that's something that is going to be important. If he hits that 2-month mark in about a week, a little under a week, then it'll really be a concern, because he is a guy that was supposed to provide a bit of a, depending on where he's in the lineup, depth scoring, or provide that good punch in the top 6. I mean, right now he's not doing any of it. So it'll be up to him to, like I said, just get a good one. Don't get a dirty one. Get a good one to really feel good about yourself, and then things should take off from there.
Yeah, 4 points in his first 6 games of the season, 3 of those 4 points being goals, and since then, only 5 assists. Am I reading that right now? Yeah, 5 assists in his last 24 games. So, struggling stretch for Drew O'Connor. And here's the thing. That's gonna ruin his market. And that's the crux of the beginning of this entire conversation is he part of the future? He's not. Maybe the short-term future. If he struggles this year, he might be, as Horwat mentioned, he might be part of next year's plan. But I don't think that he's a piece that the Penguins are looking to build that next iteration of successful hockey alongside. I think 1, he's too old, and 2, is just not part of that plan. He's just not. So if there is an opportunity to trade him, I think Kyle Dubas and the Penguins will, in fact, trade him. Speaking of Drew O'Connor, he's actually part of this week's Pens poll, which we're kind of switching gears a little bit on the Pens poll. We haven't been able to do weekly, so I should stop calling it the weekly Pens poll. And secondly, we're going to transfer that over to our YouTube channel at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. So go over there for the Pens poll. Check that out. We'll post it on the community page. It'll show up if you're on the mobile app. It'll show up at the top of the feed every time we post it. Typically, we'll go out either Monday or Wednesday to get results for either our Tuesday or Thursday episodes. Easy enough. So this week we asked, what happens first? Drew O'Connor ends his 24-game goal drought, which we just talked about a lot. A Penguins goaltender pitches a shutout, or Jesse Puljujarvi plays in 5 straight games. Horwat, what do you think happens first?
Man, can I bet the house and just say none? I'll give Drew O'Connor the push, and not because I think it's coming soon. The play hasn't shown me that it's coming soon, but because the Penguins goaltending is a gong show this year. It's improved a bit recently, but Tristan Jarry is still allowing a squeaker every now and again. And when it comes to Puljujarvi, man, I just don't see it happening for him, which sucks because he's an outstanding player and deserves the push. And honestly, that might be my second guess. But I'm not sure if that even happens this season. So at some point, Drew O'Connor is sure to score another goal. He might not be in a Penguins uniform, but at some point or another, he is sure to find the back of the net again. And that seems way more sure than the Penguins getting a shutout this year or Puljujarvi playing in 5 straight, because I'm just playing the odds here. The odds of O'Connor scoring next aren't low or aren't high, but man, they're higher than the other 2.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you there. I mean, O'Connor could score a fluky goal tonight, and that'll end this entire conversation. So that's why I'm sticking with Drew O'Connor, because 1, not just the Penguins goaltending, which Tristan Jarry had a bad game on Tuesday, the first that he's had in a handful. And obviously Alex Nedeljkovic has struggled this season, and obviously some bad luck on Tuesday night as well. But I just, not only the goaltending, but the defense. I just don't have faith in them to be able to protect the house enough to where the goaltender is going to be able to get into a rhythm and not be shelled and not be hung out to dry on more occasions than not. So that one I ruled out almost immediately after I typed it. Jesse Puljujarvi playing in 5 straight games. It seems like the only way that's going to happen is if somebody goes down with an injury. I mean, that is the only reason that he played against Toronto, is Phil Tomasino wasn't good to go. So somebody else is going to have to go down with an injury, which, again, I'm not sure the Penguins are going to stay fully healthy on the forward side of things all season long. So at some point, you'd have to imagine that Jesse Puljujarvi plays in 5 consecutive games this season. But will that happen before Drew O'Connor gets a bounce? Probably not. So I'll stick with you in this one. I'll say Drew O'Connor ends that drought. Is the end of that drought nearing? I don't know. I will say he got close against the Rangers last week. He had a couple opportunities. He got close. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's been a while. He rang one off the post behind Igor Shesterkin, but he just hasn't gotten any bounces. And eventually that's going to have to change. But it won't unless he does what we said in that last segment, unless he starts to play at that NHL pace, at that NHL level that he's kind of started to fall back from and look more like a guy that's a tweener than a guy that showed last year that he was a bona fide NHLer.
He did show it last year. It's, I don't want to say that his streak gets to 2 months, but I'd put more of a.
How many games is it between now and that 2 month mark?
Oh, they play every other day until Christmas Eve, I think. So
yeah. So I think he has 3 or 4 games to do it.
Yeah. Man. Yeah, and
he has 3.
And I pulled up the upcoming schedule last episode and said some of those teams are
at Habs, at Sens, and then at home against the Kings. If he doesn't score in any of those games, then it'll be next Wednesday, the 18th, and it'll be 2 months since he scored a goal.
Well, yeah, I could see it hitting that. I really could. And not that I want him to hit the 2 months. It's just he hasn't shown much of finding it. I mean, if recent history of just the numbers of just looking on paper here, a lot of goose eggs dating back to October, mid-October at that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you want some real perspective. He hasn't scored since 9 days into the season.
Yeah, that's
that'll put it into perspective really quick for you. It's been that long since he has scored a goal, and just that trend makes me believe that he won't find it for a couple more days. Again, it won't be until the end of the season. It might just be a little bit longer until something gives. Also, we've seen Mike Sullivan, play pretty loose with healthy scratches. Could he be taking one soon? Genuinely, because it's getting to that point of he's helping out in certain areas of the ice, but think of who the Penguins don't have in the lineup right now.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Nieto, they want to keep giving chances to. The rest of the names are escaping me, but when it comes to just Jesse Puljujarvi is one.
Well, here's the thing about Jesse Puljujarvi, and that's what I was thinking, is at 5-on-5, they do the same thing. So there's no reason to be favoring O'Connor that much over Puljujarvi if you're looking strictly at their 5-on-5. Mm-hmm. The problem is Drew O'Connor is the Penguins' second most used penalty killer. Jesse Puljujarvi hasn't stepped on the ice for the penalty kill yet this year. That's the primary difference between those two. Outside of that, Puljujarvi's probably a better option at 5-on-5, but the Penguins have relied on O'Connor so much for penalty killing. I mean, it's Nola Chari, who we know, right? We know he's going to be the number 1 penalty killing forward. And then it's Drew O'Connor. And then it's another chasm before you get to the next one. And right now it's if you look at total ice time shorthanded this year, it is Nola Chari, it is Drew O'Connor, and then it's Lars Eller. That's how far the chasm is it's the player that hasn't played on this team, that was traded from this team multiple weeks ago, before you get to another active player on the roster that has played just or close to as much time as Drew O'Connor on the penalty kill. So that is what's saving him right now, is that he's one of the Penguins' better penalty killers. Otherwise, he probably would be out of the lineup already.
Yeah, it probably would be. Did Puljujarvi play on the penalty kill last year, though? At all?
I know they did a little bit, but he hasn't this year.
Okay. I was just wondering, because I know they brought him in to be a bottom six forward that I could swear I remember Dubas mentioning. He has the pedigree of an offensive juggernaut, but also has proven to be a good bottom 6 piece and a penalty killer. I could swear those words came out of his mouth. But I also may be remembering incorrectly. At the moment, if he even has just a little bit of penalty kill experience, I know he's been doing second power play. A little bit, but even if he has a little bit of penalty kill experience, utilize him. I mean, it's a name, it's a useful face, especially if you have faith in him. I mean, the Penguins, despite having a decent stretch here, they're still in a season of nothing much to lose. 2 straight playoff misses. He started horribly this year. The time for experimentation in the NHL usually ends in about mid-November, if not before then. Unless you're a bad team, and then it continues. So why not keep experimenting a little bit?
Yeah, last year he did not play a single second. Jesse Puljujarvi, that is, a single second of penalty kill. The year prior, he played 1 second. The year prior to that, he played 3 seconds. And the highest amount of penalty kill ice time that Jesse Puljujarvi has played in his career is 3 minutes and 1 second in 2020. So I think fair to say he is not an option for the Penguins penalty kill.
So much for what I remembered.
Again, I was talking about it earlier before we got on. It's kind of like the Mandela effect. It felt like I said something, or I felt like I heard something, and it is nowhere, because I went back and scrubbed through for what I thought I said. Nowhere to be found. So again, it's not an option for Jesse Puljujarvi. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. Remember, you can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, tell all your friends, or you can check us out anywhere you get your podcast from. Pens kick off a 2-game road trip tonight against the Montreal Canadiens, conclude it on Saturday against the Ottawa Senators. We'll see if they're able to get back on track. We'll see you guys next time.